Welcome to Lessons in Dyslexic Thinking, conversations with the world's most inspiring dyslexics, where we find out what dyslexic thinking is and how each of us can employ it to change the world. Today I am joined by professional chef, social media sensation and brilliant dyslexic thinker Andy Cooks, otherwise known as Andy Herndon. Andy, you are passionate about teaching people to cook. You have cooked in some of the best restaurants around the world and now have millions of followers right across the world, with literally billions of views on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You've said my ethos is to empower people in the kitchen, help them to be better cooks, give them confidence to try something new, and most importantly, have fun. We absolutely love your YouTube and Instagram channels. They're fantastic videos. Let me kick off today by saying welcome. And first question over to you is, tell us more about your dyslexic thinking and how you think it helps you do what you do.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I remember when I first saw this cause kind of start popping up on my feed, and I was super excited to start. In fact, my sister sent it to me, and I was super excited to start seeing people talk about this subject. So, thank you for having me. I think my dyslexic thinking really, really helps me both in my professional life when I was a professional chef, just being able to be a really fast problem solver. I think that's a really crucial thing about being a really good chef in a busy kitchen is being able to problem solve quickly. And I'm always been pretty good at that. And then now, my creative mind is just kind of always going. So I have this outlet of making all these videos that really, stimulates that part of my mind. So. I think the dyslexia in me has been a big blessing.
And when did you discover that your passion was cooking?
Very, very young age. So before I remember, I even had like plastic food in a plastic kitchen growing up, and was always in the kitchen, always playing with food. And I'm one of those lucky people that have always said I was going to be a chef when I grew up, and I stayed true to that throughout all my youth, and it came true. So I've been fascinated with food for a long time now.
And what is it, do you think, that fascinates you with food? Is it that you love cooking it? Is it that you love all of the ingredients? What is it? How does that manifest for you?
I think it's changed throughout my years. I think initially, growing up as a family, we ate at the table a lot, and I think that was some of my most favorite times, eating breakfast with my brothers and sisters around the table, and then again dinner. So I think it all started with that. It was always a time where we came together as a family and unloaded on each other, and all the rest of it, and bickered and had good times and laughed. So I think that was what started the passion. And then as I grew older, it's just the love for discovering other cultures, and how other cultures have such a love for food really kind of captivated me, and still to this day.
And when you were a young person at home with your family, did you do the cooking?
I did. I probably started cooking at home when I was about 13 or 14. Yeah, but it was all pretty simple cooking. I grew up in New Zealand, and it was very meat and three veg type of food. But yeah, I started cooking at a pretty young age, and still do. I still cook all the meals at home.
Yes, as we know from your
Yeah,
YouTube channel.
yeah.
And dyslexics are very multisensory thinkers. Do you think that that helps you with your cooking, the sort of smell, taste, imagination, and all of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely all those things that you talked about. And then even more so, spatial awareness, I think, is really important in a professional kitchen. And I think as a dyslexic, you have a pretty good spatial awareness, and understand muscle memory, and you can kind of move pretty quickly, and move around people fast, if that makes sense. It's a bit like a dance almost in a busy kitchen.
We've asked other chefs about what makes them successful.
Mm.
And I think the five things that have come out are our senses are our strength. So, taste, smell, touch, sight, imagination. And that's really important when you're cooking.
Mm,
Thinking in original ways and giving ideas a new twist. And it's so many recipes are about just finding yeah, a new way of doing it.
yeah.
The third one was use your intuition to sense what tasks need to be done and in which order. So I guess leans into your spatial awareness as well in a chef's kitchen. Great at leading and motivating others at all levels. And the last one is great at communicating our passion and skills to inspire others to cook. I can see all of those in you and what you do. But is there anything else that you think we've missed, or would you agree with that list?
No, I think that list is pretty much spot on. And I guess it's not until you're old, like later in life, that you can kind of reflect on that and um, and understand how important all those things that you just mentioned are, not only in cooking but in a lot of creative kind of jobs and roles in the world. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cookery is just a creativity in a different space, isn't it? Different genre.
yeah,
Tell us about your films. How did they come about? Because you were a cook in some of the biggest restaurants around the world, and now a social media sensation. And before you tell me how that came about, we just have to say that our crew and our team are just so really, really into the way you present things. It's so dyslexia friendly. It's very quick, it's very fast, but everything's there in one place. It's amazing.
thank you. It's always not. It's life's crazy and busy, and when you read out the intro, it's kind of crazy sometimes to think that we're at, I think, almost 15 million followers now across all the platforms, and it's kind of fun to be able to share my passion with that many people. But it all started with it was a COVID. It was I was the corporate executive chef for a big corporate hospitality company here in Australia. I looked after over 100 venues around the country, across Australia and New Zealand. I lost my job at the start of COVID, and I was always a big consumer of cooking content out of interest. And my partner, Caitlin, who is in a lot of the videos, kind of said to me one day, just, you should have a go at this. So I'm very all or nothing type of person. So I went in full steam ahead, and I just started making these videos all by myself. I taught myself how to use video cameras, taught myself how to use editing software, figured out, started looking into algorithms. And I think my dyslexic thinking really helped with that side of it. Figuring out algorithms is a real black art. And I think I kind of, was able to kind of figure them out to some degree. Um, yeah, and it was it really ignited my creativity again, because I think it had probably gotten a little bit stagnant when you start in those bigger corporate roles. The creative kind of stuff gets left right to the bottom. I had hundreds and hundreds of chefs, so there was that worked for me. So it was the creativity had kind of gone out of my job, so it was really nice to get that back. Yeah, and we've been making content full time for over 2 years now, and have a successful business doing it, and we employ three other people, including myself and Caitlin, um, and yeah, it's been a pretty crazy couple of years.
And I know you talk about dark arts. I think everybody would love to know the answer to how do you make great content, but your content's very authentic. It feels, you want to watch it because it's authentic and it's fun and it's short. Do you think that's the one of the dark arts, or do you think there's a lot more to it?
Well, there's a lot of factors, but you have nailed that point there. It's being authentic is really important to me. Not only being authentic to myself and who I am, but also I love cooking food from all over the world, and trying to be and pay respect and be as authentic as I can to those other cultures. Because food culture, I think, I grew up in New Zealand, like I said earlier, to an English father and a Dutch mother. And I don't think people from that part, from England, Holland, or New Zealand, really understand how important food is to other cultures. So once you start traveling and you understand how almost a religion it is to other people, it's understandable that there's a need to make sure that you're doing those cultures justice. So I've always been really, really authentic and trying to make sure that if I'm representing someone else's culture, then I do it as best as I can.
Yeah, fantastic. And of all of your food hacks, what do you think your favorite one is, if you have a favorite, or some of your favorites?
There's lots. I think like the ones that I use the most are things like making sure you have a rubbish bin or a small bowl handy, so you're not moving away from your station when you're getting everything ready. So when you're doing your mise en place or your prep, having a small bowl off to the side that you use a rubbish bin to stop moving around so much the kitchen. And then the water and the bacon trick seems to be a favorite for a lot of people.
Yeah, tell us about that one. I think that's definitely the favorite for ours. So tell our viewers and listeners what you do with that one.
Yeah, so the way I cook bacon is I just put it in a cold fry pan. It only really works with American style streaky bacon and not the bacon that most English, not the back bacon that most English eat. But having crispy bacon, you put it in a cold pan with a centimeter of water in it, and then effectively what happens is that the before the water completely disappears through evaporation, the fat has a chance to render out the bacon, and then you get left with really crispy, delicious bacon. But it kind of it seems a bit counterintuitive to put water in a pan when you're trying to make crispy bacon, but it does work.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet actually, but I've definitely got to have a go at that one. It does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does.
And what's of all of them, what is your most viewed, or is it the bacon?
No, my most viewed videos are Hyderabadi biryani, and I think that video's probably collectively got over 200 million views now, which is pretty crazy.
Wow.
Again, it's leaning into food culture, and that's a dish that's just absolutely loved by a large portion of the population, you know, you know of India and Pakistan and all that region. So it's tugs at a few people's heartstrings, and I think people who are missing home probably missing their mum and dad's biryani.
Yeah, it really is a very global audience, isn't it, that you've got? And I can imagine it must be great if you're wanting to tap into that home recipe that your mum used to make.
Yeah, yeah.
You spent 20 years, I think, cooking in some of the top restaurants around the world. You cooked in Shoreditch in London, I know, and all sorts of restaurants around the world. It must be very pressurized working in those environments. If you ever watch any TV shows around being a chef, there are lots of them. It looks absolutely horrendous to me. What was it like working in those environments? And is there anything you miss about it?
It's exactly that. Really high pressure. I think, which I like. I thrive on the high pressure. I like operating at the extreme levels of anything. I like when I've got three or four things on the go at the same time. That's when I kind of perform the best. And that's exactly what a kitchen is. And I was working in London, kind of pre GFC. It was kind of the heyday of London gastronomy. Marco was still cooking. Gordon was cooking. Tom Atkins, who I was working for, was still cooking. It was really the heyday of the gastronomy scene in London. I think it's still pretty good now, but it was the Wild West back then. It was pretty aggressive and pretty full on. But I think some people can thrive under those environments, and some people struggle with them. And I certainly thrived under it. But it's not for the faint heart, that's for sure.
And do you miss that?
Yeah, absolutely. I miss the camaraderie. So I miss the team. A kitchen who's firing and you have a really good service. There's no better feeling than at the end of the service, packing down and cleaning down, and knowing that you nailed it and everyone's happy, customers are happy, head chef's happy, and then everyone's happy.
And a couple of the names, two out of three of the names you mentioned are dyslexic. Tom Aitken is, and so is Marco Pierre White. Did you come across a lot of dyslexics when you were cooking? I mean, a lot of dyslexic people don't talk about it still, I think, but did you?
Yeah, I think so. I think inherently you kind of know, but you're right. I think, especially my generation. So I'm 39 almost. I think there wasn't many people that were diagnosed dyslexics. I was diagnosed dyslexic at 13, but it was pretty in New Zealand. That was pretty rare. It was a pretty early stages and people understanding dyslexia. So yeah, I think inherently there's a lot of people who are dyslexic in the kitchens, and you can you can kind of see them as a fellow dyslexic. But we all dyslexia affects people in lots of different ways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's my handwriting's terrible and my spelling's appalling, and my reading's not particularly good. I can read, I just can't concentrate for long periods of time. So my numerical side usually seems to be okay, but then there's friends that I knew that their only real symptom was the fact that they'd put numbers backwards and stuff like that. So it's a pretty fascinating kind of thing, dyslexia, isn't it?
Yeah, it shows up in all sorts of different ways in all sorts of different people. And there are workarounds, and obviously technology and just leaning into your strengths is the way to become successful with it.
Yeah.
Let me take you back to your school days. So
Mhm.
you discovered you were dyslexic at 13, which is unusual. I know New Zealand is and Australia probably a little bit behind the UK in terms of picking up. They're catching up now, but picking up dyslexia. So, um, how did you find out about it? Why were you tested, and what did that make you feel? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, my mum, bless her, always, championed for me to be tested from a pretty young age. I wasn't great in school, and I went to private Catholic schools, and I just clashed with the school system. And I think at the time you think mum's being mum and saying like every mum does and says, no, no, my kid's actually bright, and I kept getting kicked out of class and stuff, but she knew, right? And so she really championed for me to be tested at a young age, and I got tested at 13, got diagnosed, and then I was put into like a beta, like a testing program where we used dictation software, and this is like the late 90s. This was quite a while ago. So I got given a laptop in my school. It was a government funded program, and there was a program called Dragon Naturally Speaking. Um, Fundamentally, the software was pretty junior, wasn't advanced enough at the time, and it didn't really work. You had to kind of read 3 novels into this computer for it to learn your voice, which is so counterintuitive to a dyslexic person, right? But it was good to see the intent was there, and ironically now I dictate all my recipes, and the software is, I just do it off my Apple, and it works perfectly fine. So um, yeah, I think it was a relief for mum more than anything that there was something there, and then to be perfectly honest, I just got out of school as quickly as I could, and carried. I went to chef's college pretty quickly, but the day I turned 16, I just got out of there because even though I was diagnosed, I probably still wasn't. I don't think they really knew how to handle it, or they weren't really equipped. I guess is probably a better way to describe it, of how to handle it. It's a pretty traditional school, and they kind of taught by the traditional ways, and they hadn't figured out that there's plenty of other ways to learn how to educate people. So I went into chef's training college and thrived, and got into the workforce early, and kind of found my calling. So
And do you think having dyslexia at school affected your self-esteem?
absolutely, 100%. I'm not an extrovert. I'm also not an introvert. But there were certainly times that I didn't get heavily bullied, but I definitely got bullied, and my grades were really bad. I didn't pass any of my exams or anything like that. And it wasn't until my last year at school that I was even allowed to have a reader writer in my exams. Um, and even that alone was I kind of pushed it away. I didn't really want to do it because I couldn't sit my exams in the assembly hall with all my friends. I had to go and do it in a different room, and yeah. So I just think there was a real lack of understanding about what dyslexia was at that point, and it affected my confidence when it came to academia. Anyway.
And what do you think your 7-year-old self would think about where you are now?
um, he probably wouldn't believe it, to be honest. My life now is. I mean, it's not my 7-year-olds. My 25-year-old self wouldn't believe where I am now. So, my life's pretty cool now. I make videos for a living, and I travel the world, and people are messaging me who I'm fans of, and it's a pretty special place to be. So certainly kind of very thankful for where I've ended up.
I saw your film with Stormzy, so
Yeah.
he's I mean, everybody's kind of Stormzy, aren't they? Which is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
And that leads me nicely on to what advice would you give young people who are struggling at school? Or also, what advice would you give to people who are stuck in a rut and want to do a career change?
Mm. Well, the school thing's tricky. I think don't be afraid to put your hand up and ask for help is pretty important. Um, and if you're not finding the help that you think you're getting, then it's it, it's often hard. But I think sometimes school's not for everyone, and there's going to be some people on here that may be like, oh, don't say that, but it wasn't for me. It didn't work for me.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's true. I think there's some great schools out there that are doing good things and are getting their heads around it, but I think that they're pretty far and few between. And if the career change things also is, I think people aren't. Uh, it's really tough when you get stuck in a comfortable position and a comfortable role, and you've got a mortgage to pay for, and you've got kids and all that. I understand that it's really hard to just kind of take a big risk, but um, my 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 ultimate advice is just never have a plan B. Just if you want to do something, just do it. And if you have a plan B, you're usually setting yourself up for failure. So go in it full steam ahead, and what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And I think nowadays, COVID obviously had a big impact on your life. And I
Yeah,
think for so many people it's made the world reevaluate how we work and what we do. So
yeah.
I think for dyslexic people particularly, you can really sort of dive into your passions and find a way to do what you really love. And very clearly you've had a champion in your mum. Did she make a big difference? I mean, she clearly believed in you and fought for you at school. Did that have a big difference?
Yeah, I think so. In hindsight, a huge difference. Just having someone champion you and being in your corner, it means the world. I think it's if she wasn't there, on my side, and then very understanding when I left and when I did all my other stuff. You know, I don't know what I'd do without her, to be honest.
What so how old were you when you left school? Because it's quite brave to allow your young son to go and really follow his passions. It's something we hear so much on this podcast that it's mums who thought, okay, I can see where my child wants to go and I'm just going to believe in him. But it's brave to do that, isn't it?
It is, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was 16, so that's the earliest you can leave school in New Zealand at the time. Um, and it was basically the day I turned 16. I just didn't go back to school. But I think she knew, she understood that it was just a waste of time me being there. I wasn't learning anything. I'd given up on the system. They had given up on me, so I was better off, doing something else, putting my energy somewhere else. So I'm sure it wasn't an easy pill for her to swallow. I don't think she did it lightheartedly, but I think she saw that I was wasting my time.
She must be very proud of you now.
She is. She's very proud, especially when if I get an article in a New Zealand paper, yeah, I get a lot of text messages. So
Oh, fantastic. And tell me about your wife and working with your wife because she's very involved in what you do, isn't she?
mm.
Again, it's having a champion that supports you. That must be a really wonderful thing to do.
It is, yeah, yeah, yeah. So Caitlin, she has another person who's been a huge, supporter of me through lots of ups and downs. I had a stint in rehab as well after some time in the workforce, and she was a rock by me, and that's pretty common in chefs as well. Unfortunately, I think substance abuse is pretty rife in that industry. And I've been sober now for 7, 8 years almost. And then when she championed me to start this after I've had multiple failed businesses, and she's kind of always, yep, okay, you start another one, that's fine. And then when she saw it get traction, and she has a background in communications and marketing, it just made sense that she kind of came on board full time, and now honestly she runs this business. It lets me do the content, but it's been a learning curve for our relationship as well. When you work closely with your partner, you've got to make sure that communication is on point because like all relationships, they're all about communication. And then when you're just with someone 24/7 and all aspects of life, that's kind of, as a, it's far more intense. So I think we're doing pretty well so far. I think we're in a comfortable place, but she really is the backbone of the business, and it's really lets me concentrate on the creative side of it, which is my strength. Let her deal with the emails because I'm useless at them.
So it sounds like a dream team. It's, I think, for most dyslexics, if you can lean into your strengths and delegate the things that you're not so good at, it really is the recipe for success. And also, just to touch on something you talked about then, failure. Dyslexics are really good at failing and picking ourselves up and having another go. Is that something that you think is very much in your dyslexic thinking ability set?
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for failing, I think, and failing fast, failing, learning from it. One of my big idols growing up was Richard Branson, who's, I think he has something to do with this charity, doesn't he? Or he's been on the
He
podcast
does,
before.
yes. He's a very close supporter.
Yeah. I've heard many stories of him and how many businesses he's had that have failed, but, there's been a few that have really done amazing things for him. So I've been a huge advocate for failing, always have been. I'm not scared to fail. And in fact, I think it's probably one of my strengths that I fail fast, learn from my mistakes and carry on. I was actually having this conversation with my team today.
Yeah, it's a really, really important part of success. I think people fear failure, and a lot of it comes from school. I think people fear failure because there's a right and a wrong answer. But in the world, it is about trying. That's how we try, learn, and innovate, isn't it? So it's super, super important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one last question. I could talk for hours, but we've come to the end of our time. One last question for you. If you had one piece of advice for other dyslexics, what would that be? Or you can have more than one if you want, but what would your advice be?
uh, don't sweat the small stuff. Like if you're not, and don't try and get better at something that you're not good at. If you're no good at writing, then don't keep trying to be better at it. I don't think anyone. But there's no need for. I think Jimmy Carr said it recently pretty well. Like if you're just going to be an average writer, the world doesn't need any more average writers, right? Like find what you're good at, and hone in on it, and really sharpen your tools on those skills, and I think you'll go far. And just like you said earlier, delegate out what you can't do. And even Richard Branson talks about this as well. And he couldn't read a P&L on a business. I'm sure he probably can't still. I shouldn't talk for the man who's not here, but and he's one of the most successful businessmen in the world, right? And he openly said he couldn't read a P&L. So focus on what you're good at, and use that to your advantage.
Yeah, that's amazing, amazing advice. Dyslexics are really, really good at certain things and really not so good at other things. And it is about leaning into your strengths and focusing on those. And that's great advice for anybody.
Yes.
Andy, thank you so much. It's been really, really wonderful chatting to you today. And anybody who hasn't checked out Andy Cooks, go and have a look at the amazing films and quick recipes and be inspired. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks so much, Kate.
This podcast is sponsored by Microsoft, who, like us, are passionate about empowering dyslexic thinking. Their free learning accelerator tools like Reading Progress and Reading Coach help dyslexic thinkers thrive. Find out more by clicking the Microsoft link in the podcast notes. And if you'd like to find out more about what dyslexic thinking skills are and how to recognise them in schools, at work or at home, you can take our free training now. Empowering Dyslexic Thinking in Schools, available on Microsoft Learn, and Empowering Dyslexic Thinking at Work, available on LinkedIn Learning. And please subscribe so you don't miss out on future lessons in dyslexic thinking.